Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me here this morning or this afternoon or this evening, wherever you happen to be. Um, I'm here not as a person who stutters. I'm a linguist, and I've been working with Greg O'Grady and on solidarity projects for the last few years. Greg was supposed to start things off today, and I was going to follow talking about one of the solidarity projects that we've been working on. But Greg is out on a cruise, and he's probably out in the middle of the ocean somewhere now. He said if he can get some internet connection, he will be able to join us. If not, then you guys have to listen to me for 20 minutes. So we'll keep our fingers crossed. Maybe he'll come in the last minute. But in just to get things started off, I wanted to share my screen here because I have a bit of a presentation to show you, just to keep me organized and give you something to look at. So as I mentioned, I've been working with Greg O'Grady. Greg is a person who stutters from St. John's, Newfoundland. And this is, if you're not familiar with where Newfoundland is, here's a map of Canada. And right here is St. John's, Newfoundland and Labrador. It's the easternmost province in the country of Canada. And you can see by the picture on the screen here, it's as beautiful as it looks, as you might think it might be. However, it does rain a lot. There's a lot of rain, drizzle, and fog in the all throughout the province. But it is on its best days, it's mind-blowingly beautiful. So that's where I work at Memorial University in Newfoundland. And Greg is a retired individual who has put in his years in Ontario, in Toronto, working in care homes, care centers, and care homes. He moved back to St. John's when he retired, and he thought that was going to be it, and he'd be able to relax. But as he says, he always reminds everybody, and me especially, he's like, I'm doing more work now than I was when I was working. So but I think he's happily retired and happily working on these projects. He started something called the Newfoundland and Labrador Stuttering Association, and their mission, as it says here, is to advocate for people who stutter. When he returned from Ontario, from Toronto, to St. John's, Newfoundland, he discovered quite quickly that there wasn't a lot of resources and support available for people who stutter in the province. So Greg, being who he is, decided to take things into his own hands, and he started an association which is now a registered not-for-profit organization in the province. They have a board of directors, and they have a number of projects that they work on. The most recent being a project that is introducing stuttering awareness material and a campaign into the public schools of the province. So the kids all the way up from grade 2, I think, or maybe even kindergarten, up to and into the end of high school. This month we'll now have nice shiny posters in their schools with QR codes that will link them to more information about what stuttering is, and to provide advocacy and support for students who do stutter, and just general information for teachers and those who don't stutter. So how does this all fit into what I'm here? Well, I'm talking about another project that I've been working on with Greg, and it's called go back to my title page here. It's called Some Stutter Law. And Some Stutter Law is a podcast that we've been working on for the past 3 years. We're into season 4 now. We have 79 episodes. And I see a number of familiar faces here. We have people who have appeared on the podcast before, Ryan being one, Tom, Lisa, Daniel, I think is here as well. So hi everybody, good to see everybody's faces and again. And of course the invitation is extended to everybody here in this session too. If you're interested at all in being a guest on our podcast, and we'd be happy to have you. So after recording and producing 79 episodes, everybody has a different story to tell. Everybody has different experiences. You're all united around the common theme of stuttering. We speak to researchers, we speak to people who stutter, we speak to speech language pathologists, advocates, and we've kind of broadened into more than just stuttering. We look at communication differences more generally. So one of our themes is to promote this idea of it's okay to communicate differently. And so in Greg's introduction to the podcast, I want to play a little bit later on so you can get a sense of what the podcast sounds like. And it's a video podcast too. It's we have audio versions, but we record it in an app called Riverside, which just allows us to capture the video as well as audio. And so the video versions are available on Spotify and YouTube. But Greg starts off every episode by reminding our listeners and guests and himself. He says this is a safe space to speak and to own your truth. It's a safe space to communicate differently without the fear of being judged or feeling shame. It's not how we communicate that's important, it's the message that's important. And he says this is a space where you don't need to ask permission to be who you are or to speak the way you do, and you don't have to apologize for being you. Okay, so that's the beginning of the episode, of every episode. It's our intro. It's evolved over the course of 4 seasons, but this is our latest incantation that Greg recites for everybody. And as far as I'm concerned, these are all truths as well. I have a somewhat radical, maybe radical. I don't know. Maybe with speaking with other people who stutter, it might not be so radical. But stuttering is a communication difference. It's not something that needs to be pathologized or fixed. And I'm saying that as a person who doesn't stutter. So I know other people will probably have different opinions of it. But what we want to do with the podcast is to make a space that's generally welcoming for people who communicate differently. And listening to the previous presentations, going back to I think Kayla and Dory's and the last one about the improv, all of these are, you guys are all communicating a pro stuttering agenda, let's say, right? A pro stuttering view, or it's okay to be who you are and to speak the way you are. Doreen's presentation was particularly struck a chord with me because she mentioned the narrative, the narratives that people often buy into about what stuttering is and how it might need to be cured and might need to be fixed. The podcast that we produce and that we put out every Sunday morning is a chance to change that narrative, to say that it's okay to stutter, and we want to share that message and that story through everybody's individual experiences that come on as guests, and hopefully, this is the grand dream that we all have. Hopefully, we can change the world. Hopefully, we can change the way people are perceived and viewed, and take away the stigma if you speak a little bit differently than somebody else, right? We want to expand what's considered normal, a normal way of speaking. It's not simply just the fluent people that speak that's normal. Normal speech is everything from disfluent to fluent. As a linguist, I can say that um, as a, maybe that's part of my radical ideology, but that's also an observational scientific fact. When we get into these ideas that we value certain types of speech over the others, that's more based in personal preferences and ideologies about who we want populating the world and who we want to be listening to. It doesn't have to really do with anything with other than that dominant idea about how people should sound. So I'm preaching to the choir, I know, but it is this idea that we want to promote, that it is okay to stutter. Our podcast is available everywhere you can find podcasts. I wanted to ask people, how many people listen to podcasts? And let me try to figure out a way to get back to seeing everybody's hands if you are a podcast listener. Sorry. Let me see now. I go back to here. Okay. I see a few people hands up. So podcasts, just generally, just like true crime. I know true crime is a hot topic, a hot genre now for movies, films, Netflix, podcasts. So I'll put my hand up. I listen to true crime. I also listen to there's a lot of stuttering podcasts out at the moment. How many people listen to a stuttering podcast in particular? Okay, great. So again, there's some people that do. For those that don't, maybe this will convince you to. If not our podcast, I'd love it if you did listen to this one. But pick a podcast. Go on to Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts and just type in podcasts about stuttering, and you'll find at least half dozen to a dozen podcasts. So there's a lot out there, and that's great. Here's another one. As I said before, I don't think we can tell these stories too often. I think every chance that somebody can get to hear someone who communicates differently and to tell their story about who they are and why they speak differently is a plus for our world. And so it would be great if everybody had a chance to tell their own story. And so what you'll find here on our webpage are the current episodes, or the current episodes and the archived episodes. We've been doing this since it started during the pandemic, when it first started off, so 2021. And they're all archived here. They're all available at our website, somestutterla.ca. But it's also available through Apple Podcasts, on YouTube. You would see the video options. On Spotify, you'll see the video options. And everything it can be linked to from our webpage. And yeah, so Anita, thank you for asking, what does la mean? And I mentioned talk about this on the very first slide. So we are a podcast based in Newfoundland and Labrador. And if you don't know anything about Newfoundland and Labrador, the one thing you should know, other than that beautiful picture that I showed earlier, is that Newfoundland and Labrador is one of the oldest, has the oldest migrants from England and Ireland and Scotland. They've been migrating for at least, I got to go back there, 400 years or so. So we have very Irish and English dialects, and there's a lot of these relic features that are still in the Newfoundland dialect today, that have come over the hundreds of years from England and Ireland and so on. So la is is well, the whole phrase "some stutter la" is kind of like a Newfoundland saying. Newfoundlanders in their dialect, for those that speak it, will use "some" as an intensifier, so that they can say something like, "Oh, that's some good," or "I'm some happy today." Um, I'm some you're some annoying, or you're some bad, whatever it happens to be. They can add some to the beginning of it to intensify it. um so we're drawing attention to this idea that people stutter, that some stutter, right? um and then at the end of the phrase we have this word la, and la, from a linguistic point of view, I'm giving you a little bit of a linguistic lesson today. La is something that is meant to direct people's attention to what you're saying. Okay, so you can say things in the Newfoundland dialect. You could say something like, "Pass me the pass me the salt and pepper, la." And la just means it can either be there's two ways to interpret it. It can either be something like you're pointing to it and you're drawing someone's attention to it. It's like over there, la, right there. That's one interpretation. There's another idea that says la is a term of endearment. It might come from the word love. Okay, so pass me the salt and pepper, love, comes out as pass me the salt and pepper, love. So some stutter la, it just means that's some stutter. Listen to this point. I'm pointing to it. I'm making it clear. Or we're saying that's some stutter love, which is a common term of endearment in Newfoundland and Labrador. So thanks, Anita, for asking that, because I meant to talk about that a bit earlier. Our podcast has evolved over the 4 seasons. We first wanted to just tell people stories and give the people an opportunity to share their experience as people who stutter, or people with other speech and communication challenges or differences. We are moving into our 4th season, and over time we've said we can link these to other initiatives, global initiatives. And so we have been starting to think about how we can promote the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals through the podcast ourselves. Goals 3, 4, and 10. If you're not familiar with the Sustainable Development Goals, you can look it up and look it up on Google. There's 17, I think, of them. But goal 3, 4, and 5 applied specifically to our initiative and what we hope to do. Goal 3 is to promote good health and well-being. Okay. Stuttering, some people can put it into the umbrella or the bracket of health, physical health, mental health. All of these things are relevant. So we want to promote good health and well-being. We want to be able to provide a tool for satisfying goal number 4, which is to educate people that aren't in the know, people that don't know the first thing about what it is to live with as a person who stutters. And by doing that, we can also promote and satisfy goal number 10, which is to mitigate or reduce inequalities that people face because of the way they speak. Okay, so that's where we're at now as one of our themes that we want to start promoting in the show itself. This list will be no surprise to people who stutter. So these are the themes that get talked about, that we are able to allow people to share with others through sharing their personal stories and experiences. So podcast itself is designed to promote and to hopefully inspire. But we get into the nitty-gritty of fear and anxiety, what it's like to identify as a person who stutters, what it's like to be self-critical, how to overcome negativity and struggle, the impact of therapy and medicine, and I won't go through the whole list because these are probably topics that you're quite familiar with. But it's an open space. It's a safe space, as Greg says, to talk about any and all of these, and anything that hasn't been talked about. We welcome people to join us and share their identities and their personal experiences. Okay, all of our material, every single one of our episodes are licensed under a Creative Commons license. And what that means is that all of our episodes are completely free to listen to, but also for you as listeners to use. If you're a teacher or you're a consultant or whoever, or if you want to remix part of our episode, you're able to do that. Everything's available on our website for free. If you want to download one to use it for your own purposes, if you want to make your own podcast or audio story, a documentary, and you want to use a clip from one of our episodes, that's completely fine and okay to do that.